The morning Mom died, Dad didn't cry. I remember that detail with crystalline clarity because I sobbed until my throat was raw, until my eyes swelled shut, until I couldn't breathe without hiccuping. But Dad just stood at her hospital bedside, hands in his pockets, jaw clenched, staring at her peaceful face like he was working out a complicated math problem. When the nurse asked if he wanted a moment alone with her, he checked his watch and said he had a meeting at 11. I was 23 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in literature and dreams of becoming a writer. Mom had been my champion, my cheerleader, the one who believed in me when everyone else, especially Dad, thought creative writing was a waste of time. She'd been sick for 2 years, cancer eating through her body while I put my life on hold to care for her. According to YouTube analytics, 99% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. Dad was always too busy with his real estate business, too important to sit through chemo appointments or hold her hand during the bad nights. 3 days after the funeral, while I was still wearing the same sweatpants and surviving on coffee and grief, Dad called me into his home office. The house felt cavernous without Mom's presence, every room echoing with her absence. I'd grown up in this house, but it no longer felt like home. "Sit down, Maya," Dad said, not looking up from his computer. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with iron gray hair and eyes the color of slate. People always said he was handsome, distinguished. I used to think so too, before I understood that a handsome face could hide a calculating heart. I sat in the leather chair across from his massive desk, pulling my sleeves over my hands. "What is it?" "Your mother left some assets," he said, still typing. "We need to discuss the estate." My heart lifted slightly. Mom had always told me she'd taken care of me, that I wouldn't have to worry. She knew Dad had never approved of my choices, that he'd always favored my older brother Marcus, who'd gone into business, who'd married the right kind of woman, who'd given Dad the grandchildren he wanted. "Okay," I said quietly. Dad finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. Everything was in joint accounts, of course. The house, the investments, the life insurance. It all transfers to me automatically as her spouse. "But Mom said—" "Your mother said a lot of things in her final months," Dad interrupted. "The medication made her confused. But there is one account, a savings account she opened years ago in your name. About $200,000, my breath caught. $200,000. It was more money than I could imagine, more than enough to rent an apartment, to give myself time to write, to finally pursue the dream Mom had nurtured." Tears sprang to my eyes. "However," Dad continued, and something in his tone made my stomach drop, "your mother and I discussed this before she became too ill. That money was meant to be a down payment on your first house, whenever you settled down with a responsible partner and a real career. Since you're showing no signs of either, it makes sense to keep it invested properly." "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice small. "I mean we're going to transfer it to an account I'll manage. When you're ready, truly ready, to use it wisely, we'll discuss accessing it." He stood up, straightening his tie. "We have an appointment at the bank tomorrow at 10. Don't be late." That night, I couldn't sleep. I crept into Mom's study, which Dad hadn't touched yet, and searched through her files. That's when I found the letter, tucked inside her favorite book of poetry, written in her shaky handwriting from those final weeks. "My darling Maya," it read, "by the time you find this, I'll be gone. I want you to know that the money in the account ending in 4782 is yours. I opened it 20 years ago and added to it every chance I could. Sometimes just $50, sometimes more. It's from my own earnings, my own inheritance from my mother. Your father doesn't understand you, doesn't see your beautiful soul and your gift with words. But I do. This money is to give you freedom. Freedom to write, to dream, to become who you're meant to be. Please don't let anyone take it from you. This is my final gift, my way of protecting you even after I'm gone. Use it with my blessing and my love. Mom." I held the letter to my chest and wept. Then I carefully photographed it with my phone and returned it to its hiding place. The next morning, Dad was already in the car, engine running, when I came downstairs. He didn't speak during the 20-minute drive to the bank. His jaw was tight, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. I clutched my purse in my lap, feeling the weight of my phone inside, the evidence of Mom's wishes stored in its memory. "I don't think this is right," I said quietly as we pulled into the parking lot. Mom wanted me to have that money. Your mother wasn't thinking clearly, Dad said flatly. And you're too immature to handle that kind of money. You'll waste it on some artistic fantasy, end up broke and begging for help. I'm doing this for your own good. I'm 23 years old. I'm an adult. Then act like one. He got out of the car and strode toward the bank entrance. Inside, the bank manager, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Patterson, greeted us with professional sympathy. Mr. Thornton, Maya, I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you, Dad said briskly. We need to handle the transfer we discussed on the phone. She led us to a private office. My hands were shaking as I sat down. This was wrong. All of it was wrong. But Dad was so forceful, so certain. I'd spent my whole life being the quiet one, the peacemaker, the daughter who didn't make waves. Mrs. Patterson pulled up the account information on her computer. Maya, this is your account. Before we proceed with any transfer, I need to confirm this is your decision. I opened my mouth to speak, but Dad cut in. Of course. It's her decision. This is a family matter, and we've discussed it thoroughly. Maya understands that this is about protecting her future. Maya? Mrs. Patterson looked at me directly. Do you want to transfer this money to your father? The moment stretched out, elastic and terrible. Dad's eyes bored into me. I thought about the letter, about Mom's shaky handwriting, about her love and her sacrifice. I thought about standing up to Dad for the first time in my life. But I was tired. So tired. Tired from 2 years of caregiving, tired from grief, tired from existing in a house that no longer wanted me. And Dad was relentless when he wanted something. He would make my life miserable, would cut me off completely, would turn Marcus against me. Yes, I whispered. I want to transfer it. The betrayal of those words burned in my throat. But Mrs. Patterson had already started pulling up forms. Dad leaned back in his chair, satisfied. I'll need you to sign here, here, and here, Mrs. Patterson said, sliding papers across the desk. My hand moved robotically, signing away Mom's final gift. But as I signed the last form, an idea sparked. While Dad was reviewing the paperwork with Mrs. Patterson, I pulled a deposit slip from the counter and quickly wrote on the back, I'm being coerced to transfer money my mother left me. Her letter proving her wishes is hidden in her study. This is theft. Please help. I dated it and signed my name. When Mrs. Patterson stepped away to process the paperwork, I stood up quickly. I need to use the restroom. Dad frowned. We're almost done. I'll just be a minute. I hurried out of the office and found a bank employee at a desk near the lobby. Excuse me, I said, my voice shaking. I need to leave this somewhere safe. It's very important. I pressed the deposit slip into her hand. Can you please file this with my account records? Account number 4782. The young woman, whose nameplate read Jennifer Chen, looked at me with concerned eyes. She glanced at the note and her expression shifted. Are you okay? Please, I whispered. Just keep it with my file. Date stamp it. Please. She nodded slowly. I'll take care of it. I hurried back to the office, where Dad was standing, ready to leave. All done, Mrs. Patterson said. The funds will be transferred to your father's account by end of business today. I felt hollow walking out of that bank, like I'd left a piece of myself behind. Dad took me home and dropped me at the curb without a word. I went inside, packed a single bag, and left. I couldn't stay in that house another night. I couch surfed with friends for a while, then found a tiny studio apartment I could barely afford with the part-time job I got at a bookstore. Dad called once, 2 weeks after the bank visit, to inform me that Marcus and his family would be moving into the house. It's too big for me alone, he said, and Marcus needs the space. What about my things? I asked. We packed up your room. You can pick up the boxes next weekend. I didn't respond. I just hung up and cried. The months that followed were hard. I worked at the bookstore during the day and wrote at night, pouring my grief and anger into stories. I lived on ramen and hope, wearing thrift store clothes and walking everywhere to save bus fare. But there was a strange freedom in it too. For the first time in my life, I was living on my terms, making my own choices, even if they were constrained by poverty. Dad called occasionally, always with the same message. When you're ready to grow up and get a real job, let me know. I stopped answering. Then, 11 months after Mom died, I sold my first story. A literary magazine accepted my piece. a raw, painful narrative about loss and betrayal, and paid me $300. I cried when I got the acceptance email. Mom would have been so proud. More sales followed, small ones, but they added up. I built a portfolio, applied for grants, started getting noticed. My name appeared in respected journals. I was surviving, even thriving in a modest way, without Dad's money or approval. I thought about that note I'd left at the bank sometimes, wondering if Jennifer Chen had filed it away. If it sat in some folder, gathering dust. It had been an impulsive act, born of desperation and anger, but at least it existed, a testament to the truth, even if no one ever saw it. 2 years after Mom's death, everything changed. I got a call from Marcus. We hadn't spoken since before the funeral, and hearing his voice, so much like Dad's, that same authoritative tone, made my chest tighten. "Maya," he said, and he sounded strange. "We need to talk. It's about Dad. What about him? Can you meet me? Tomorrow? It's important." Something in his voice made me agree. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Marcus looked terrible. Hair unkempt, circles under his eyes, his expensive suit rumpled. He ordered a black coffee and didn't touch it. "Dad's been arrested," he said without preamble. I stared at him. "What?" "Financial fraud. The FBI raided his office last week. They've been investigating for months." Marcus rubbed his face. "It's bad, Maya. Really bad. He's been running a Ponzi scheme through his real estate business, stealing from investors for years." The whole thing collapsed. I couldn't speak. Dad? Arrested? It seemed impossible. "There's more," Marcus said. "They seized everything. The house, his accounts, his assets, everything. Sarah and I have to move out. The kids." His voice cracked. "We lost everything we invested with him. Our savings, the kids' college funds, all gone." I felt a strange numbness creeping through me. "I'm sorry," I said automatically. "I know you and Dad weren't close," Marcus continued. "I know he was hard on you. But Maya, I didn't know—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I didn't know about Mom's money." My head snapped up. "What?" "The investigators went through all his accounts. They found the $200,000 he transferred from you. When they looked into it, there was a note in the bank files. Your note about being coerced." Marcus looked at me with hollow eyes. "The bank manager who helped with the transfer, Mrs. Patterson, she's cooperating with the investigation. She said she suspected something wasn't right at the time, but didn't pursue it. She feels terrible." The room seemed to tilt. "They found my note?" "Yes. And they tracked down Mom's letter, too, from her study. Dad kept it." Marcus laughed bitterly. "Probably as some kind of trophy. The prosecutors say it's evidence of financial elder abuse and coercion. It's one of many charges, but Maya—" He reached across the table, grabbing my hand. "I'm so sorry. I should have protected you. I should have known what he was really like." I pulled my hand back, emotions swirling too fast to process. "Where is he now?" "Jail. Bail was denied because they consider him a flight risk." Marcus pushed a business card across the table. "This is the prosecutor's office. They want to talk to you, and Maya, the money. They found where Dad stashed it. You might be able to get it back." I took the card with numb fingers. Over the next few months, the full scope of Dad's crimes emerged. He'd been stealing for over a decade, creating fake investment opportunities, forging documents, lying to clients. The investors he'd defrauded included elderly couples, young families, even some of his own friends. The total losses exceeded $8 million. My case was a small part of the larger prosecution, but it mattered. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Elena Rodriguez, called me in to give a statement. "Your note was date-stamped the day of the transfer," she told me. "Combined with your mother's letter and witness testimony from bank employees, we have clear evidence that your father coerced you into giving up money that was rightfully yours." The bank employee who filed your note, and Jennifer Chen, documented her concerns at the time. "Will I get the money back?" I asked. "We're working on asset recovery. Your case is strong because we can prove the money originated from your mother's separate assets. And we have documentation of her intent. Unlike the other victims, whose money was commingled and spent, yours was kept relatively intact. Your father moved it several times, but we've traced it." She paused. "Why didn't you report this when it happened?" I thought about that question for a long time. "Because he was my father," I finally said. "Because I was grieving. Because I was tired and scared. and I didn't think anyone would believe me. I believe you, Elena said gently, and we're going to make this right. The trial was a media sensation. Local newspapers ran stories about the prominent businessman who'd stolen millions. I wasn't named in the press coverage, but I had to testify. Sitting in that courtroom, looking at Dad in his prison jumpsuit, I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just a profound emptiness. His lawyer tried to discredit me. Isn't it true you were estranged from your father? That you resented him for not supporting your career choices? Yes, I said calmly. Isn't it possible you misunderstood his intentions? That he was trying to help you by managing money you weren't equipped to handle? No, I said. My mother left me that money with explicit instructions that it was mine. My father took it against my will. I left a note at the bank the day it happened because I knew it was wrong. A note you claimed to have written. A note that was date-stamped and witnessed, Elena interrupted, along with contemporaneous documentation from a bank employee expressing concern about the transaction. I looked directly at Dad then. He stared back, his face carved from stone, giving nothing away. But I saw it, just a flicker, the realization that I was no longer the quiet daughter who could be bullied into submission. The jury deliberated for 6 hours, guilty on all counts. Dad was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. He showed no emotion as the judge read the sentence, but I saw his hands shake slightly as the bailiff led him away. Marcus approached me outside the courthouse. Maya, He stopped, searching for words. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I told him. He destroyed so many lives, including ours. Marcus looked broken. How did we not see it? We saw what he wanted us to see, I said, and maybe what we wanted to believe. 6 months later, I received a check for $217,000, Mom's original amount plus accrued interest. With it came a letter from the Victims' Recovery Fund, stating that I'd been one of the fortunate few whose money could be fully recovered. I sat in my tiny studio apartment, holding the check, and finally let myself cry. Not tears of joy or vindication, but of grief. For Mom, who'd tried so hard to protect me. For the years I'd lost. For the father who'd never really been a father at all. I didn't spend the money right away. I needed time to process everything, to figure out who I was, without the weight of that betrayal pressing down on me. I kept working at the bookstore, kept writing, kept living my small but honest life. Eventually, I used some of the money to attend a prestigious writing residency. I spent 3 months at a retreat center in Vermont, surrounded by mountains and silence, writing the novel I'd always wanted to write. It was about a young woman finding herself after loss, about the complicated nature of family, about the invisible ways people hurt each other and sometimes, miraculously, heal. The novel sold to a major publisher. My editor called it a searing portrait of grief and resilience. The advance wasn't huge, but it was enough. More importantly, it validated everything Mom had believed about me. On the day my book was published, I drove to Mom's grave. I'd avoided the cemetery for years. It was in the same town where Dad had lived, where I'd grown up, and I hadn't wanted to risk running into anyone who knew him. But that day, I needed to be there. I knelt by her headstone and placed a copy of the book against it. You were right, Mom, I said softly, about all of it. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for the gift you gave me, not just the money, but the faith, the knowledge that I was worth protecting. The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of autumn leaves. I stayed there for an hour, talking to her, telling her everything that had happened. When I finally stood to leave, I felt lighter than I had in years. Marcus reached out occasionally. He'd lost his job, his house, his marriage. Sarah had left him, taking the kids to her parents' house in Oregon. He was working as a junior associate at a small firm, starting over at 40. I met him for coffee sometimes, watching him struggle to rebuild a life from ruins. Do you hate him? He asked me once. Dad? I considered the question. No, I said finally. I don't hate him. I pity him. He had so much. A wife who loved him, children, a successful business he could have run honestly, and he threw it all away because he couldn't stop taking more than he needed. That's not someone to hate. That's someone to feel sorry for. I can't forgive him, Marcus said, for what he did to Sarah, to the kids. You don't have to, I said. Forgiveness isn't mandatory, but carrying hatred around is exhausting. Trust me, I tried it. The truth was, I'd spent months being angry after Dad's arrest. Angry at him for stealing from me. Angry at myself for being weak. Angry at the universe for taking Mom and leaving him. But anger was like drinking poison and expecting someone else to die. Eventually, I had to let it go, not for Dad's sake, but for mine. I moved to a bigger apartment, one with a dedicated writing space. I started teaching creative writing workshops at the community college. I made friends who knew nothing about my past, who valued me for who I was, not who my family had been. I dated cautiously, learning to trust again. And I wrote. I wrote stories about broken families and small betrayals, about women finding strength they didn't know they had, about the slow work of healing. Readers reached out, telling me my words had helped them through their own losses, their own moments of feeling powerless. 3 years after Dad was sentenced, I received an email from Jennifer Chen, the bank employee who'd kept my note. She'd followed the case in the news and wanted to know if I was okay. I think about that day a lot, she wrote. I was so young and unsure, and I almost didn't file your note. My supervisor told me it wasn't my business, that we couldn't get involved in family matters. But something in your eyes that day, you looked so desperate and so brave at the same time. I'm glad I trusted my instincts. I wrote back, you saved my life in a way, not dramatically, not all at once, but you gave me a lifeline when I needed it most. That note was my truth, and you preserved it when I couldn't protect it myself. Thank you for seeing me, for believing me enough to take that small action. Small acts of courage can change everything. We became friends after that, meeting for lunch occasionally. Two women who'd been connected by a moment of crisis and kindness. One day, 5 years after Mom's death, I received a letter from the prison. Dad wanted to see me. I stared at the visiting request form for a week. Unsure what to do, Marcus advised against it. He doesn't deserve your time, he said. He's never apologized, never shown an ounce of remorse. But I went anyway, driven by a need I couldn't quite name. Maybe I needed closure. Maybe I needed to see him diminished, powerless behind bars. Maybe I just needed to look him in the eye one more time and feel nothing. The prison was a grim concrete building 2 hours upstate. I sat in the visiting room, surrounded by other families having desperate conversations through plexiglass dividers, and waited. When Dad shuffled in, I barely recognized him. He'd aged decades in 5 years. His hair was completely white now, his shoulders stooped, his face gaunt. He sat down slowly, picking up the phone on his side of the glass. "Hello, Maya," he said. His voice was hoarse. "Hello, Dad." We looked at each other for a long moment. "Thank you for coming," he said finally. "I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure either. I wanted to—" He paused, seeming to struggle with words. "I wanted to see you, to know how you are." "I'm fine," I said. "I'm good, actually. I published a book. I'm teaching. I'm writing." Something flickered in his eyes. "Your mother would have been proud." "Yes," I agreed. "She would have been." Another silence. "That money," Dad said, "from your mother. I thought I was protecting you." I shook my head. "No, you didn't. You thought you were controlling me. There's a difference." He flinched slightly. "Maybe you're right. I know I'm right. And you know what? It doesn't matter anymore. You took something from me, but you couldn't take everything. Mom's real gift wasn't the money. It was her belief in me. That's something you could never touch." Dad's jaw tightened. For a moment, I saw a flash of the old anger, the need to dominate. But then it faded, leaving only exhaustion. "I'm sorry," he said quietly, "for what that's worth." "It's worth very little," I said honestly, "but I appreciate hearing it." "Will you come again?" he asked. I thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But Dad?" I leaned forward slightly. "I don't hate you. I don't wish you more suffering. I hope you find some kind of peace in here. But whether I visit again or not, I'm going to be okay. I already am okay. You don't have that power over me anymore." I hung up the phone and walked out without looking back. Driving home, I felt something shift inside me, like a locked door finally opening. I wasn't the frightened 23-year-old who'd signed away her inheritance anymore. I wasn't even the angry woman who'd testified at the trial. I was someone new, someone forged through loss and pain, but also through resilience and hope. Mom's money had given me time and space to become a writer. But more than that, her love, preserved in that letter, protected by my desperate note, validated by strangers who'd cared enough to act, had given me something more valuable, the knowledge that I was worth fighting for. Karma hadn't come in the form I'd expected. I'd never wished for Dad's arrest or the revelation of his crimes. I'd never wanted his life destroyed. But life has a way of balancing accounts. His greed and need for control had eventually consumed him, not because I'd sought revenge, but because that's the nature of lies. They grow until they collapse under their own weight. My small act of writing that note in a moment of desperation had been enough. Not to destroy him, he'd done that himself, but to preserve the truth until the world was ready to see it. Now, sitting in my sunny apartment, surrounded by books and the quiet hum of a life I'd built brick by brick, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not about Dad or betrayal or courtrooms, but about a woman who discovers her mother's garden after years of neglect and slowly, patiently brings it back to life. Outside my window, spring was coming. The trees were budding, and birds sang their complicated songs. Somewhere, Dad sat in a cell, living with the consequences of his choices. Somewhere, Marcus was rebuilding his life, learning hard lessons about integrity. And somewhere, in a small cemetery plot, Mom rested, her work finally complete. I was free. Not because someone had punished my wrongdoer, but because I'd learned the most important lesson of all. No one could take away what truly mattered unless I let them. My talent, my voice, my resilience, these were mine alone. The story flowed from my fingers, words becoming sentences, becoming pages. And as I wrote, I smiled because I knew Mom was right. This was what I was meant to do. This was my gift, my purpose, my life. And no one, not even someone who was supposed to protect me, could steal that away. Karma had shown up, not with thunder and lightning, but with quiet persistence. The truth had emerged exactly when it needed to, preserved by a desperate note and a young bank employee's conscience. Justice had been served not through my actions, but through the natural consequences of cruelty and greed. I was whole again, different than before, scarred but stronger, and finally blessedly free.